So first off, I want to say, thank you to those guys who have been here talking to me about how education is applicable, how the development of esports is going to take place in an academic setting. And obviously they've given some great examples using the BTEC there, which of course you can always go and find out a little bit more about on the Pearson website. You can see all the modules, you can see all of the units that are being taught there. And of course, you can always reach out to us here at British Esports if you want a bit more advice, and either myself, Tom, or Gary, or any of the education team will get back to you. So next up on the list, I have a really, really good friend of mine, a guy called Kieran Holmes Darby. He's the co-founder and esports director at Excel Esports. I'm sure some of you have heard of him. So yeah, please welcome in Kieran. And today we're going to be just talking about career pathways into what happens next over, once we've looked at education and that kind of what happens next in the career side of things. Hi, Kieran.
Awesome. Hi, Elliot. How are you, sir?
I'm really good, thank you. Yes, very good. Sorry to keep you waiting there a little bit on the panel.
No worries at all. Thank you. Thank you for having me on. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. So listen up. Would you mind just first of all, because you've got a really great story to tell, okay? And I know it's not the most traditional way of getting into esports, but I'd love to hear it, and I'm sure everyone else here would.
Yeah, 100%. I was hoping we could kick off a little bit with my background. So my name's Kieran. Lovely to meet you all. I, as Elliot introduced me, am one of the co-founders of Excel Esports. Excel Esports is the leading British esports brand. We, at our heart, we are an esports team, but we like to think of ourselves as a culture brand and a gaming culture brand, and we do a lot more than just run esports teams. So a little bit about my story. So I went to university and studied law. Was supposed to take quite a traditional corporate route, but whilst at university and during my studies, my brother and I, Joel, who was a management consultant at KPMG at the time, decided that given that we are gamers, that's we've always casually gamed. That's kind of how we stayed in touch and bonded as brothers whilst we were at universities on other ends of the country. We decided that gaming was such a passion for us that we wanted to look at doing something kind of more seriously in the space, and I think we found a niche, which was essentially that esports or competitive gaming was happening across the UK, but no one was really doing it professionally, in our opinion, and really taking what was a very, very talented group of individuals and gamers, and giving them a platform to be recognized for their talents properly, and bring big business in to support them and kind of realize their dreams of being professional gamers. So back in late 2014, so almost 7 years ago now, we started up this passion project, which was very much a bedroom organization and hobby at the time. And I did this on the side of my degree, and it was a great experience to go on this entrepreneurial venture. And I think that we just really timed kind of the market very, very well. And put ourselves in a good position to capitalize on the esports industry, which was obviously, in 2014, a lot smaller than it is now. So we kind of rode that trend and grabbed on the coattails of what was a booming industry. And Excel went from strength to strength. And we just completed a couple of months ago our latest funding round, which is public knowledge of 20 million quid. So it's big business these days, and we're hiring lots of people, and it's very, very exciting.
Just a casual bedroom org to 20 million quid. Yeah, no problem. But yeah, thanks for sharing that, Kieran. It's a good story. I mean, I've heard it before, but it's good to hear again. So listen, Kieran, you're obviously running one of the strongest UK orgs, I would say, not just in terms of position, but also in terms of finance. Could you just talk to me a little bit about your organizational structure, how many kind of people you have working in what roles, and then I'll follow up on that once you've finished your answer.
Yeah, so we're roughly a 50-person organization, but that's including professional players. So we are split up into essentially 3 key departments. There are kind of supplementary departments which I can touch on outside of that, but the 3 kind of key departments are esports, which is essentially everything competitive gaming. So that's all of our professional players, all of our support staff, which include in-game coaches. They include out-of-game coaches, which support our players with health and well-being, making sure they get the right amount of sleep, nutrition, all of that good stuff. And yeah, really and then some managers in there, which are more kind of just day-to-day support and admin related tasks, liaising with publishers, etc. Then we have the marketing department, which is probably our biggest department outside of esports, which essentially houses everyone from social media marketers to content creators to graphics designers, all of the creative side of the business as well really sits in that marketing department. And then finally, we have commercial, which is obviously the dollar signs side of the business, which both have kind of direct to consumer side of the commercial and also brand side. So our key revenue stream is brand partnerships, much like most sports teams, where big brands come in and want to kind of use us to be an authentic voice to the community. So we have a lot of commercial people on brand partnerships, etc. And then on the direct consumer side, you're talking kind of merch or any digital platforms to really go straight to the community with things. So they're kind of the 3 key areas of the business. There's some supplementary roles in operations, project management, finance, legal, kind of the standard, HR, the business pieces, or people and culture, as we like to call it. So yeah, but they're kind of the 3 main areas.
When you employ people, are you looking at their background in gaming, or are you looking at their background in business, or is it a mix of both, or what's your kind of preferred style?
Yeah, it's a really good question. So if I take it a step back and use kind of my own experience a little bit to answer the question, when I came through education, which is not that long ago, but it's long enough ago that esports just wasn't in existence in education. It didn't have that, or certainly in the UK at least, that it really wasn't an option. But what I think I did well alongside my kind of what I'd say is more traditional education, even though I was looking at the esports industry, I think I supplemented my education well with entrepreneurial ventures in gaming and esports, but also more fundamentally just being a part of competitive gaming and being a part of teams and learning how to work in a team, how to lead, all of these things. And I think that they really built up kind of my character and my personality, which helped me when I ultimately entered the industry to take kind of a leadership role in the industry and create something. So I kind of lean on my own experience a little bit that it's been difficult for people like me to look at esports education because it just wasn't there for us. So we kind of have to adapt our thinking a little bit. And I think what's great about gaming kind of more broadly is the kind of accessibility element of it, and therefore the diverse audience it engages. And, this makes obviously a great tool for the education sector. But whether it's esports at GCSE, A level, degree level, whatever, I think esports as a subject topic, comes up a lot. And I think what's most important for me is actually the curriculum that's behind that esports title, because as we've just spoken about, there are loads of areas of esports, and that's just in our organization, which is primarily team based. In esports, you've got obviously the industry is still in its relatively nascent state, but we're seeing more and more opportunities arising across key stakeholders, which for me, the kind of key stakeholders are brands. So brands that are investing in the space or creating their own tournaments, etc., whatever. That could be any big blue chip brand, to be honest. Tournament organizers who are obviously putting on the esports events. They might be working in conjunction with brands, teams, or games publishers to put on these events. Teams, which is obviously our business and what we do. And then games publishers. They're the ones that hold all the keys to the industry. They make the games, they own the IP to it all. And in those 4 areas, there are a range of different opportunities, in esports. Maybe it's kind of more in gaming, but it has kind of an esports element to it. And therefore, for me, it's more about the curriculum and the transferable skills that people are learning, more so than the kind of subject of esports. Now, if I'm hiring for a marketing role, let's say, what I want to see is a marketing education. Whether that has been marketing specifically on esports or not is less, needed. But what is needed is, if you're going to work in esports, is a passion for the space, and showing that you've actually put yourself out there, you've networked, or you've done something cool in the space. That's obviously, that's very important as well. So I think there's a blend, and it's about more what you've done in the space, or in education in the topic.
Yeah, so what's really nice is, as we've just discussed on the panel before, is how you can go and study marketing, for example, and then go and be a marketing for anybody, really. And as you say, if you've got that passion for that particular niche or that particular industry, it's transferable. Brilliant, thank you. So what I wanted to then go to is that how many professional players do you have compared to staff levels in terms of full-time paid staff? I mean, and you don't have to disclose that information if you don't want to, but it's just, I think it's an interesting question, because you want to know how big the team is to support X amount of players.
Yeah, so I'd say that half of our business is the esports department that I spoke about, and half of it is backroom staff, if you want to look at that, which is marketing, commercial, operations, all of that stuff. The half that is esports is 75% players. You're talking like 17 professional players, 25% support staff. So yeah, hopefully
that's quite interesting. Yeah, that's
a good idea.
I would have expected it to be more 50-50 or even 60-40 in staff managing, because there's a lot that goes into it,
I think it depends on it. If you look at a professional sports team, it's kind of like the higher up the levels you get, the more support staff you get per player. So our most well-known team, which is our LEC team, basically has like a 1-to-1 ratio. So it's like one player to one support staff. But as you get sort of into the more newer esports, such as Valorant, we don't have a 50-50. We have a more 75-25 support structure.
Gotcha. So how does one take the career pathway that they want to go on, say it's journalism, and approach Excel and say, I want to be your next article writer or your next journalist? How does one make that breach into the esports game?
Yeah, so it's a really good question. I mean, number one, what I will say at this point is there is more.
We're not hiring.
No, we are aggressively hiring in lots of different roles, but I think what I'll say at this point is there's more demand than availability at this point when it comes to esports roles. That's just how it is in the UK, because if you look at I just spoke about brands, tournament organizers, teams, and games publishers, which actually makes it broader than most people think about what roles you could potentially go into. But if you look at kind of esports specific people that are hiring, there's not hundreds of employers in the UK. It's more like tens. And in that sense, there is more demand than availability. I think that's changing, at least, the trajectory of where the industry is going and all of the new companies that are kind of starting up. I think there are more and more opportunities becoming available in those various types of businesses. But I think that, this sounds a bit strange to say on an education summit, so apologies in advance, but the most important thing if you're looking to get into esports is network and talk to people in the space, and your network is your net worth at the end of the day, and it's a little bit about who and because what I mean by that is who because then you'll know where the opportunities are, because you've spoken to enough people, and you'll know who is hiring or who's looking for certain roles before they go public potentially. So the best thing you can do is network and talk to people and understand the industry a little bit more, and understand the companies that are within it. But outside of that, if you're applying for a role, for instance, at Excel, you obviously need to demonstrate a skill set that is relevant for the specific role. You can't just be an esports fanatic, like that doesn't, fanatic's a terrible word to use. You can't just be you can't be fanatical about esports, right? That's great if you are, and that's a big plus point in any interview that you get to or anything like that, but you've got to demonstrate a skill set that is relevant for the role that you're applying for. That's really where we're at.
Okay, so we've got lots of teachers in the chat here, so I'm going to ask something that they are probably going to get asked a lot, and it's helpful for me to ask it in the right way that arms them with the right answer. So I've got, a student, let's pretend I'm a teacher, right? I've got a student who is desperate to become a pro player. I'm pretty sure, based on what his friends say, that he's not going to make it. How can I convince him to move into the esports industry rather than focus all of his efforts or her efforts onto the main stage, as it were?
Yeah, so this is where esports or competitive gaming for me is for everyone, right? You don't have to be a pro in order to be involved in the community and in the industry. For instance, I got involved in the industry by playing competitively and realized very quickly that I wasn't ever going to be good enough to be a pro player. I'm actually very bad. I'm actually very bad at video games, which is absolutely fine, because ultimately I went and took an entrepreneurial venture and hired people that were good, so I could watch people who were good at playing the game, right? So I think that for me, I wouldn't discourage people competitively gaming ever, because I think that it's a bit like sport in that sense that you don't have to be a professional footballer to enjoy playing football. So I think competitive gaming can teach you a whole range of skills, even if you're not the best in the world. But I think what teachers can, I suppose, take away is that it's a very, very minute amount of people that actually make it to be a professional. I mean, if we look at League of Legends specifically, which is a game I know very, very well, we hire 5 professional players in the top league in Europe, and that's 5 of 50 players that play the game professionally in Europe at the highest level. 50 players in a game that is played by 22 million people in one day is not a lot of people. So when you think about it like that, it's a very, very, very minute amount of people that actually make it to the top, and that's how it should be, because then you can really celebrate the talent of those people that do make it. But those who aren't necessarily going to get there, let's not discourage them competitively gaming, but let's make them realize that the level that they would need to get to be professional is potentially out of reach, or potentially not within their wheelhouse, and therefore get involved with the community and stay involved with it, so that you can find other opportunities that maybe suit you better.
That's a really, really solid answer, actually. Thank you very much. So listen, I've got sort of maybe 1 or 2 more questions. I think we're running out of time. Look, if you guys in the chat wanted to ask Kieran or any of the other people that we've had on this first half, there will be some breakout sessions in a minute just before we head off. But anyway, before we disappear into that, well, we've got one more speaker session anyway after yourself, Kieran. But I just wanted to ask you, how much have you found your passion in life in esports? Did you grow up not knowing what you wanted to do, or did you always know it was going to be esports? And if so, when you started working in it, is life complete? You know what I mean? Have you reached like the pinnacle of enjoyment, or your work enjoyment at least?
Honesty is key with these answers, and the honest answer is that I was supposed to be a lawyer, as I said at the start of this interview, and I was supposed to follow a very, very corporate route, and that was what my parents were very happy for me to do. The esports industry kind of almost even took me by surprise, even though I'd been working in it for 3 years, in that an opportunity came up to pursue my passion full time. And I appreciate that's a very privileged position to be in, and I was able to grab it. But at the time, it was a massive risk, essentially turning down what was a training contract in the legal world, to go and pursue this entrepreneurial venture that had no guarantees of success. But what I will say is I've 100% found my purpose and found my why, and found my passion in this industry, which is essentially to add value to the gaming community. It's a community I've been a part of my whole life, and if I can add value to people within it, then amazing. You know, my proudest moments are giving people jobs in a space that they're truly passionate about. I absolutely love that, and that makes me feel complete, and hopefully it makes them feel complete. So yeah, if I can continue to do that, then great.
What about your 30 under 30? I thought that would have been your proudest moment.
No, that just keeps the parents happy that getting rid of law was a good idea.
Gotcha. So is there, obviously, you know, with many good years ahead of you, is there any chance that you'll go into law, or do you think you'll stay in esports now forever, or maybe you're going to esports law?
Esports is life now.
Okay.
So yeah, the competitive gaming world more broadly is where I will spend my entire career, I would imagine.
So we're speaking a little bit about the future, and I'm going to invite on a couple of other two more guests in a moment to speak about the trends of esports in the future. But just before you and I part ways, what do you think, as somebody who's in the industry, in the professional scene, do you think the future of esports is going to look like in the next sort of 5, 10, 20 years?
Yeah, when I was answering this question 2 years ago, I was saying you're going to see more and more events pop up on your doorstep, and then COVID hit, and that kind of made me look like a liar. But what I'm seeing as a trend is, like, ultimately esports is a digitally native industry, and it thinks digital first, right? So all of the community engagement plans, or the the fan experiences, or whatever that esports is creating, are going to be primarily digital, and they're going to be focused on digital first. However, what I believe we will see is these communities start to have more and more of a physical presence as well as a digital presence, and we'll see, you know, schools, universities, we'll see local gaming hubs in city centers. We'll see more and more people engaging with each other on a physical level for their shared passion of gaming. So I think that, yeah, what you're going to see is more and more venues, more and more kind of retail experiences, things like this. And it's just going to be it's going to be a bit harder to ignore esports as an industry in the kind of mainstream, in inverted commas.
Brilliant. Listen, Kieran, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you very much for your time. Please stick around as well. I've got one more talk that I want to go through before we have a break, where we will separate into breakout rooms, and there'll be a chance for everybody in the chat to ask Kieran or any of the other guests that we have on in this first session a few questions if you like. But thanks ever so much, Kieran.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.